Hello, Internet. This is again Competent Council, and you are joined with Muhammad Hafizul or Haffisz and
Adi Putra, also known as Adi.
I was always counting like how many can respond to that. And Adi, fresh off from state election, today we are recording on at 16th of August. On the 12th, it was the election, and we all know the results already. Let's jump right into it.
Okay, so let's see here. I think we can go with how public sentiment. I was in KL last week, lah. So they were talking about. I was asking around and saying that. So, what do they think of the state elections? And most of the sentiment said that predicted 50-50, that three states will be given to Perikatan Nasional and three states will be maintained under Pakatan Harapan. So, for those who still don't know, the state of Kedah, Terengganu, Kelantan is held by PN, while Negeri Sembilan, Selangor, and Penang is still under the administration of Pakatan Harapan. But I think looking at this election, status quo. But I think if we look at the numbers, it's going to reveal a bit of a bit of a shock and a bit of some surprises here and there. So, Hafiz, where do you want to start first with the composition of this election?
Shall we go how Keluar Sekejap did it in their podcast, state by state?
Okay, I think we can. I think fair enough.
Okay, let's start with this stalwart of or a fortress of pass, clean sweep in the Terengganu state. How about that, Adi? Clean sweep. Nada, zero.
All seats given to Perikatan Nasional. I think that came as a surprise because you would think that maybe, I don't know, we know it's a stronghold, but one seat or two seats to PH, I mean, that seems possible, right? But this is a clean sweep, absolutely devastated and completely destroyed. I mean, if we look at the trend back in 2018, it paints a slightly different picture. Now it's more like solidified the PAS and Perikatan Nasional's hold over Terengganu itself.
Like it's always in the history of our election. Terengganu is known one of the swing states. Always in the starting 2004 in swing. So the expectation of the UMNO of Terengganu is they're expecting to swing back, but never happened. Like what KJ said. But more interestingly is the what do you call the warlord of UMNO there, Dato Ahmad Said, who defended that seat for 5 consecutive elections in a row, defeated by Dato Razali. So it's Dato Razali was very shocked with the outcome. So this is again to show that in the past there's always a struggle between the divide of the Malay votes. So some will go to PAS, some will go to UMNO. But watch what happened when UMNO decided to join a different what so-called non-Malay alliance, and what you get is all united under one umbrella, which is now under Perikatan Nasional. So what happened here is the swing of the Malays towards the Malay-only party. Do you agree with that analysis, Adi?
I think that can be applicable as we look more into Kelantan and Kedah later on. But also, if we look at the composition for PAS that they fielded, I mean, the current sworn-in Menteri Besar Ahmad Samsuri Mokhtar, he's also quite a veteran juga. He's also quite a well-known figure in Terengganu and PAS's rank and file, vice president, and all kinds of other positions. And, being able to lead, sort of like end up Menteri Besar leading the charge here, it just goes to show that it's also the sentiment. But some of these figures that we see in Terengganu are also just as entrenched as UMNO's representatives. Like UMNO has its own structure there. It's also something that people in Terengganu are used to. But it's more about who can deliver the most rhetoric, who can deliver and inculcate the values and the culture for the Terengganu people. And is, I guess, PAS able to win out the sentiments there compared to UMNO. And I wouldn't blame them as well, considering how the feelings towards UMNO has been very lukewarm ever since the last general election. UMNO has been on sort of a downward trend, but I think we can get on that a bit later. So it's a combination of many factors, which I think have been brewing up since 2018, 2019, and definitely PAS has taken advantage of that. They've rode on the momentum expertly, and I think this is a masterstroke on their side to be able to win absolutely, like 100%. So it's somewhat like you can say it's a triumph for them.
Yeah, totally. And as we gonna talk more let on what's happening in different states as well, like I want to reiterate that what's underlying behind all this is there's two extremes on the other end. So we have the AP and PAS. It shows that these two parties are the biggest winners in election, and also recently a general election in November. So we see on the both extreme end that these two are the polarizing, if we can so call the trend for the voters. You either on the right or very left. Well, some argue that they are centrist or center left, but hey, in Malaysia, you either right or left. I don't believe in centrist in Malaysia. But having said that, these are the main thing. We will keep talking about this back to again and again. But depending on certain places, especially in few other factors will play a part, which is the candidates and also local issues. So that's why this, I think, I will when we go to those who win marginally like 30 votes or less than 1,000 votes. So these are the seats that I think, yes, they vote for either all Malays or the left, but if you double down to it, zoom in, there are other like, underlying issues. Let's shall we move on to the next thing?
Yeah, but before that, I like to, you talked about this sort of rivalry between DAP and PAS. It's funny also because you look at them geographically. Terengganu is on the east side, and Penang is on the left side, on the west side of the peninsula. So it's symbolic as well.
Right and
There's
left.
there's a geographic symbol as well.
It's like they already all planned this.
Yeah. Okay, so I think maybe we'll take one from Brigada Nasional, and I think since you brought it up, let's talk about Penang as well. So Penang is always seen as this DAP stronghold for the longest time, and especially since the political tsunami back in 2008. But however, for some people, they see that the results. Okay, for some they might see it as it's natural. This is standard fare. The results are standard fare. But I've heard for some people that the results in Penang kind of highlights here that there is also the same sentiments brewing that has happened, that's swept through the PN states. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean the announcement that Sami made like days before election was I think very very uncalled for, but it seems didn't affect the election at all. By PH actually can maintain the two-third majority that they have in Penang. But having said that, also it shows that Penang a little bit more dynamic, where you can see at least two BN seats two seats won by BN, and in other words, it can be a starting point or ground zero for BN revival in Penang if they maintain this coalition going into the general election 16. So I think there's a good. Penang. We always know, like you said, it's been a disruptor back then, and these are the type of voters or state where they will not fix to. You cannot call them a fixed deposit. Like they are always a issue-based voters. Current issue or whatever that very dynamic voters. So they will play local issues as well as national issue. So the states that you cannot predict, where it's just some rhetoric they would just like buy into it. But having said that as well, in Seberang Perai, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, because they won. Like, let's say, let's zoom into Permatang Pau, Nurul Izzah. It's where Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister Kampung, is. All three dunes, they was all being taken by Perikatan Nasional, and in Pulau, I think there are 2 or 3 dunes that won by Perikatan Nasional. Pulau is like a highly concentrated, mostly majority Chinese voters, yet can still at least 3 dunes. So in terms of performance, if you want to talk about performance, Perikatan Nasional doing very well in Penang as well. Despite PH maintaining 2/3 majority.
There's definitely something here that I'm definitely not privy to, but there's an underlying dynamic here. I mean, if UMNO, that plays itself now, they've kind of positioned themselves as the Kerajaan Perpaduan friendly party for the Malays, winning about 2 seats, while Perikatan Nasional having 11. I think it's even though it's dynamic, how can Barisan Nasional come from here? How can they be able to capture the 11 seats that Perikatan Nasional has hold? Because of course they have a 2/3 majority, but we can see that eventually, should sentiments be played towards its extreme conclusion, who knows what could happen as well? Like you mentioned, there is quite a huge shift here, and I think that also represents Penang's dynamism as well, because you have quite it's very starkly contrasted. I think it's a very contrasting state, because you still have Malay voters who still subscribe to some of the ideas that Perikatan Nasional and what UMNO used to have. So it's trying to it's how can Pakatan Harapan maneuver itself to affirm these PN voters that they should maintain its hegemony over the state, because we saw, okay, the tsunami turned it around, but at any time it can be turned back again.
Yeah, I think this is where a lot of political analysts would say that UMNO needs to what is called reform its party through its leadership. Now, either you interpreted that in terms of getting rid of Zahid Hamidi, or Zahid Hamidi changing skin. Either way, thing would work for UMNO, because what the underlying here is that the Malay voters no longer believe that Zahid, of course, which is 47 court charges, as well as in bed with the EP, doesn't gel really well with the Malay heartlands voters. So they cannot comprehend for their life that how they're gonna vote, how they're gonna trust a Malay party president to achieve this so-called like ketuanan Melayu, the supremacy of the Malays, or the hak-hak orang Melayu, the Malay privilege. So I think while UMNO need to deal with it internally, PH as a whole need to drive a good narrative on that UMNO trying to be not trying to be part of Perikatan Nasional, but also try to bring new angle in terms of like, hey, we are not risking our hak-hak orang Melayu, agama Islam, and all this. We are doing the same thing what we did for the last 60 years, so that the narrative can be driven by all the component parties, and at the same time, UMNO we internally have to reform. Like I said, with getting rid of Zahid Hamidi, that's a question, 1 million question to be asked.
But I think that's also comes into the conversation about limitations as well, because what I can see from here is that PH, they do not have especially its component parties, they're not able to mass enough in terms of resources to compete in so many seats, as many seats as they would like. When you look at just PAS and Bersatu, they can contest in almost 190 seats. How can the stalwart DAP, which I think is the strongest a member in this Kerajaan Perpaduan alliance here, this coalition here, they can only be able to summon enough resources to contest 40 seats. PAS can field double that amount. So I think resources here is also going to be a challenge moving forward. But then again, this this Bersatu PAS, they have members who have been in power, who has been able to consolidate the resources over a long period of time. Maybe if the current government is willing to adopt those kinds of practices, which they rode on the fact that they will dismantle them, maybe they could be able to summon enough of the material resources and logistics to be able to compete on the same scale as Perikatan Nasional. I just want to say that maybe there's also a limitation. There's only so much PH can actually go from here.
Well, talking about resources, let's take example for in Terengganu, right? Like if you see all the saluran, all the channels, like the younger channels, 6, 5, I think it was 7, they are all mostly voting for Perikatan Nasional. And we all know this because all these voters, all these young voters coming from, well, getting the information from mainly from one sources, TikTok. And like how KJ always jokingly says that the Twitter is Twitter Darul PH. I think TikTok is TikTok Darul Perikatan Nasional. So
yes, exactly.
this is where PH needs to double down or triple down, quadruple down their effort on ground battle that needs to be tackled. There's no dilly-dally here. I mean, you can I know, Fahmi Fazil can make a one video, but it's need to be more synchronized and more galvanized front line for everyone doing the same thing. It's not a silo thing where Fahmi Fazil, because he's a communication minister, have this responsibility. No, it has to be every adun, every MP from Pakatan Harapan or unity government doing the same thing. No one working in silo. If they're working in silo, Perikatan Nasional will be laughing off to the election ballot.
Yeah, I think for PN, they recognize, and I think they've been doing this for a while, that how social media is a force multiplier for them. And I think PH, they like you said, Twitter is mostly their domain, but not everyone is on Twitter compared to TikTok. I think the audience on TikTok is tremendously tenfold compared to Twitter in terms of political participation. But
having said that about this TikTok and Twitter thingy, can you imagine JCOM is being led by Professor Agus? I mean, with all due respect, he's a good, excellent, brilliant academician. But for the love of God, as someone who leads JCOM, I think someone else would be more suitable to sit in that chair. So I think there should be a reform, not just cabinet. Maybe after this election there will be a cabinet reshuffle, but also all this GLC, especially JCOM, needs to be reshuffled and look at. Otherwise, these are the things we swept under the carpet, and next thing they lose. Moving on to the next step, shall we?
Hold up, before I just want to ask a quick question. Do you think the drama in DAP also contributed to some of the gains Perikatan Nasional has made? Because DAP was mired with all kinds of internal issues with some of their long-time incumbents, their long-time members, aduns, suddenly not being fielded this time. And like Ramasamy also was quite vitriolic after he was told that he was not going to go for another term.
I think this is a well-known policy where even in the last general election, where we can see Ong Kian Meng didn't defend his seat. He gave to Sharizan, a much younger politician now. And it's not just in Bangi. So what happened in this state election within the AP party is just a normal rejuvenation of fielding younger candidates. I think Ramasamy overplayed his card and think that he could be. He think he's bigger
more important than he is. More important than he is.
Yeah. So I mean, some people in Penang says that Ramasamy is for at least for the Indian community, it's like Sami Velu. He has that influence over the Indian community in Penang. But hey, are you a one-man show or you want to help the party? So this is, I think, the timing of his announcement really fishy, and it proved that Anthony said he was not sincere.
Fair enough. All right. So I think we can move on back to the mainland here. So we have two picks. Which one would you like to go for, Kelantan or Kedah?
Let's go Kelantan first.
Okay. So, in no surprise, to be honest, for a lot of people, we can see that Brigadier Nasional was able to win 43 seats in Kelantan, while Pakatan Harapan and Barisan Nasional only won one respectively. This is also almost, as I can say, equally as devastating for Pakatan Harapan as it was in Terengganu, and I think we're going to see another trend moving on to Kedah later.
Yeah. Well, it's more devastating towards BN because BN felt it more candidates there.
And they used to be quite strong there as well. I mean, they had quite a good presence there.
Yeah, they have figures like Razali Hamza, Jaslan. Where are these stalwart BN leaders?
I think a lot of people would disagree on the relevance of Razali at this point already.
Hey,
he's been doing it. He's been doing it.
Cycle.
Yeah, he's like you said with Ramasamy, he can do a lot on his own, but there's more to it than just the individual, right? There's the party to consider.
Correct. Well. Yeah. Not even Razali Hamza is bigger than us.
Yeah, I think this also reflects the same trend that we, I think, pointed out in Terengganu here, is a culmination of many factors that has been brewing on, and I don't really want to touch on the whole Malay sentiment yet until we get to Kedah or until we get to the other states. But other than that, Haffiz, what other trends do you see here?
I think for Kelantan, I think it's same momentum also from general election. The only, I think it's Kota Lama, right? Kota Anggrek or Kota Lama that Amanah won. It's in the middle of Kota Baru, and it was poised to win because of potential from general election. So I think the reading was correct there. So they expected to win at least one, and it happened. So I mean, for PH, well done, you achieve your sort of target. BN, otherwise, not so much. I think this is due to the fact that one of their figure, I mean, Dato Anwar Musa, left. I mean, was kicked out of BN and joined right into PAS. So it galvanized even more. Like we already know, these are the co-voters of PAS. Kelantan is the fortress, and Anwar added into the fold is just even more stronger. This is like Avengers getting all their superheroes lining up. So it's totally a smackdown for Barisan Nasional, and the positive here, at least positive here for Pakatan Harapan, is that they have now a ground, one adun, where they can start doing their work. Whether it will work or not, they still have to try and to find out. I have a suspicion that they can at least influence the other, at least in the Kota Baru area, to side it with Pakatan Harapan. Otherwise, as see like how the last minute drama where the what do you call that Secretary General of PAS could not confirm who will be their poster boy, so-called the next MB, and then we know today it was not meant to be for Dato what is his name again, Dato Amar or something, the previous MB, and now we know Dato Nusuruddin is the new MB for Kelantan. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's natural finally that they move on to I don't know, I guess a younger candidate with Nasiruddin Daud, because Ahmad Yaakob, the former Menteri Besar, he's he's served quite a tremendous amount already in Kelantan, and has played a significant role in laying the foundation, being the past spiritual leader. And I think it's more like it's the, what he has cultivated in terms of the jentera, in terms of the structure and the uh, staying power of PAS, I think was easily transferable to Dato Nasruddin. So I think this is more just a changing of the guard, so to speak, that still aligns with the general idea of PAS. Like compared to Barisan Nasional or UMNO in particular, the changing of the guard tends to be always met with a huge upset or a huge uproar that tends to generate a lot of in internal controversies. But I think PAS, I think they have been able to shy away from that kind of internal disputes, and I think it's in Kelantan, this new Menteri Besar from the past Menteri Besar highlights that it's willing to be able to transfer power over, and at the same time not lose any significant amount of popularity. So this also kind of indicates that, of course, that individual charisma matters, but the party structure, the party ideology, also is a significant factor that has to be considered.
Yeah, I mean, Kelantan as a whole is we know it will be sided with PAS. It's just the real shock here that BN failed at least not gain one seat and Amanah gain one. So that's a huge slap on BN leaders in especially Kelantan BN leaders. So yeah, I
But
mean
how
not
long has
much to be said in Kelantan. Sorry,
Amana? How many terms already at this point?
I have no
I
idea.
I, I think that's going to stay forever with Guru Saleh. That one seat until forever.
Well, yeah, like Azalina said, you've made your decision, you pick your government. Now, just like a marriage, you have to live with it. So, good luck for everyone in Penang, Kelantan, and Terengganu. Moving on.
Okay, then okay, I think this we can go to another state, which I think has an overwhelm, easy to read. I think it is Negeri Sembilan, because what's interesting here is that it's sort of the opposite in Negeri Sembilan compared to Kelantan here. It's a bit more obvious here, with Pakatan Harapan winning 17, Barisan Nasional 14, and Perikatan Nasional winning 5 seats. But it's quite, I think it was last general elections, it was a bit more on the dynamic side. It was a bit more split. So what do you think? I could be wrong.
I mean, one of the, if you want to look at percentage gain by parties here, Perikatan Nasional actually scored very very well because they started with 0 and now they have 5. So I think Negeri Sembilan as well as Penang and Selangor have pretty much similar profile of voters. It's just in Negeri Sembilan where the dynamic of, because Negeri Sembilan have very so-called strong PH and also strong UMNO because Tokmat is from Rembau and Negeri Sembilan. So we have this clash of after they won the election commission didn't mention that any party actually successfully passed the post because no one had 19 seats. Even then they say like PH that much and BN that much. They didn't announce any government. So while the election commission says that, there's rumors saying that maybe Tokmat wants to be the Menteri Besar or some other no leaders. But now we know it didn't happen that way. But all these rumors being pushed around because we all know there's underlying all this. There's power struggle between not just internally PH within its component parties, but also BN. So that's why we see a dynamic that's a bit different, but in the end they can hold on to it. Yes, it's two-third majority, but like I said, BN gain from 0 to 5 aduns now. They cannot just PH, they cannot just brush this off. This is a serious threat to Negeri Sembilan, and because most of the seats in Negeri Sembilan, except Seremban or the cities area, Malay concentrated Malay more than 70% voters. So if they made a wrong chess move, it could the Perikatan Nasional could pull a Kedah move in Negeri Sembilan. That's what I'm suspecting.
I think I agree because we can see that Barisan Nasional is meant to, especially UMNO, is meant to some rally that Malay support, which Perikatan Nasional has already been shown to masterfully summon, and I think they were able to pull off at least some inroads here. But now it's how did they move forward from here. So I think in terms like the narrative about how there's this existential battle for the Malay votes. I think Negeri Sembilan, Selangor, I think these are the perfect battlegrounds to encapsulate where does it go from here. I think, it's how much of, because there's always this conversation going around that what kind of Malay vote is there. There's the ones that are in the more urban areas, which have been more exposed to the sensibilities that's provided by Pakatan Harapan. And then you have those that are a bit more on the conservative side. So it shows that that Negeri Sembilan Selangor still has these pockets of, there's still that feeling of Malay conservatism, which, if like you said, not tempered properly, could sweep through and become galvanized and precipitates an even stronger sentiment than what Perikatan Nasional has banked in on now.
Yeah, I mean, Perikatan, like, again, this is the whole team for this state election, and like Rafizi said in BFM recently, just before the election, he says that Pakatan Harapan cannot be more Malay than those in Perikatan Nasional. So any attempt or any strategy that involving to attack all this, their so-called what we call the core value of Perikatan Nasional, where this is like, hey, this is for Malay for Malays, Islam and Islam, this kind of if you can call it rhetoric. I think we should PH should attack around it. Try to ignore this identity politics then being played by Perikatan Nasional and improve on other things. Because I believe in the end, it will swing those on the fence. Why I'm saying on the fence? Because these are the Malays that can be persuaded with rational and logic that it's not the case that Malay losing powers, we are losing our sultans and whatnot. It's not happening. It's just being painted in our head to happen that way. So all this on the fence could be persuaded by more economic improvement in the next 3 years, more infrastructure for especially for those B40s in Kedah, Kelantan, and Terengganu. Otherwise, if we try to play their game, PH will not catch up to their level, and it will be a race to the bottom if we want to do so. Again, we is PH. So that's what I can see. Other things like, local issues or current issues, that's depending on case by case. But generally, if we see after this that Anwar still keep going to Kedah and keep going to Kelantan, despite, being told like, hey, not even one seat to you, Anwar Ibrahim. But if he steadfast, keep going, I think those on the fence will keep thinking like, hey, he's really a genuine guy here, the prime minister that wants to galvanize not just in Semenanjung, but he is the only person that can attract Sarawak and Sabah. So why I'm not with him? So those in Perikatan Nasional also need to think that this is Perikatan Nasional pick. It so happened that 50% of the states that in this election are their stronghold. So it looks like they're in power, whatever. 50% is very good. but they need to be reminded that there are more than just 3 states in Malaysia. So can Perikatan Nasional win without non-Malay, non-Muslim voters? Can they become the government of the day without incorporating Sabah and Sarawak? Well, we know in the past they did, but will they join again Perikatan Nasional? And will Perikatan Nasional ignore forever these non-Malay urban seats, majority Chinese Indian seats? Can they become government? I think they know the answer to that, but again, they want to enjoy the ride of the wave what they have today.
I think that really depends on who in Perikatan Nasional are we asking. I think past they are content with what they have. I think it's Bersatu, which I feel is a bit more ambitious here with trying to form a federal government. But I'm going back to you said that how Pakatan Harapan needs to this whole idea of the fence sitters, the people who are uncertain. Um, we need to also know how many of them are really the fence sitters. Are they really the silent majority on these issues? And I think this is one thing. I know this might generate some kind of debate here, but I remember early when if the idea of trying to attract back those that have went to Perikatan Nasional, I think KJ already summed it up saying that the gaslighting on PN voters has already started with noticing how on the Twitter space that, or even on other social media platforms, that Pakatan Harapan supporters are already attacking Perikatan Nasional voters for calling them all kinds of unsavory things. It's a similar situation with Hillary Clinton calling Trump supporters as the basket of deplorables. So if we're going to start with Pakatan Harapan trying to win back these people, you are going to. It's already. You can already estimate that you're losing them by virtue of this kind of dichotomous view here. Is okay. They didn't vote for us. They didn't vote for us as in PH. There must be something wrong with them. It does nothing but draw the line in the sand. And I think Perikatan Nasional benefits from this because it solidifies the people who already wants them in power, who already votes for them. So I think this is the danger here, which I don't know if Pakatan Harapan can control its supporters, telling them, say, hey, we have to respect the decision here, which Anwar did say. But how much of that is able to translate into the sensibilities of their supporters who see that, who already have sort of somewhat of an antagonistic outlook on those on the other side of the political divide? I think without that being addressed, PH will, this by virtue of its the divide here, the supporters will push potential supporters away from them. Like, no one wants to be called stupid or backwards or extremists just because they have a different set of principles, a different set of ideas as you.
I think in politics you cannot escape from being called names or any other unsavory words. But I think the strategy here is to give back their medicine, because like we all quite know, like especially the issue that you mentioned, that I think we all aware of the term walaun for the supporters of Perikatan Nasional. But why we always talk about this derogatory word towards Perikatan Nasional, while there's also wala non for the Pakatan Harapan. So see how
It cuts both ways.
it cuts both ways, and see how Perikatan Nasional trying to play victim here. Or we are, because we in Kedah, in Kelantan, we are marginalized, we are poor, so you call us stupid to vote for Pakatan Harapan. They play that very well, and even more so, most of the Pakatan Harapan fan base, they jump into that trap. They latch into that and like keep hoarding on that. So that's what they want. They play victim. Just take 1 point of this ex-footballer Badrul Bakhtiar.
Was it the Sabah player?
Yes, he used to be in Sabah FC. He said that manifesto will be revealed after he won, so please vote for him first. So in any metric, this is idiotic thing. But I think there's there's a purpose here. I think that they use sort of like a trap, like yeah, I know this is something not to be said publicly, whatever, but let's see how they react to it. And the reaction is what they are waiting for. And look how Pakatan Harapan react on it. It's like, hey, this guy's a monkey. He didn't know what he was saying. And man, I mean, like, yeah, to the fence setters, like they let's say if you're local and he greeted you at the market this morning, and you're probably saying, he seems like a nice guy. Why they keep saying Badrul Baghdad is a monkey? Maybe he was nervous, so that he was saying that. So there's a lot of consideration if you are local or voters for that particular seat. And I think this is the narrative that should be brought into national level, where Pakatan Harapan, I mean, yeah, of course you can call spade a spade, but there's more into than just calling people outright stupid or blatantly idiot.
I think this benefits both as well. It just depends how content are you with the current support that you have. And like I said, PAS seems to be content with who they have. And I think that kind of sums up a bit on Negeri Sembilan and Selangor. And talk about playing the victim, I think we saved Kedah here, which I think Muhammad Sanusi, the Menteri Besar, played that sentiment with a masterstroke. He played that beautifully, and I think even though all things said about him, all things aside, we have to give him that political acumen to rally, to be able to be almost a clarion call, or almost play like this role of martyr that surges that that popularity. It's like they said, even bad publicity is publicity, right? So, like, I think we have to give him somewhat of an MVP here for Perikatan Nasional.
Yeah, I mean, even his lifting his hand, the way Anwar Ibrahim did, he sort of like took over that from Anwar Ibrahim. Now it's the Tangan Sanusi. So you can see his influence now, and how he can mobilize not just his fan in Kedah by gaining more majority now, but also outside Kedah. So these are the figure that PAS want to bring into the mix. But also PAS, you need to be careful with, because he, of course, PAS leadership also warned Sanusi to a certain of his remark. But I think this is where PAS give him like a full autonomy, like where he can move his like you so-called a master stroke. But in the end, I think whatever that move he take to gain popularity will bite him in the ass if he cannot fulfill what he said. So all this REE, yes, he said that he didn't know about the guy, but again, oh yeah, he came for Hari Raya open house. But flipping on certain issues can cost him his political mileage. But again, as of now, it doesn't seem so.
Yeah, definitely. Considering how, let's just for the numbers, for the record here, Perikatan Nasional won 33 seats, Pakatan Harapan only 3 in Kedah. So, I think we can use Kedah to wrap up the idea of this whole, we keep teasing about this whole Malay sentiment, green wave, or whatever tsunami you want to call it. I think ending it up in Kedah would be a great way to open up that conversation.
Adi, I would like to ask you, do you agree that there is a green wave?
I think it's not more so a green wave. It's more so that I think it's always been there. It's just waiting for whoever is brave enough or bold enough to tap into it. And I think with the last election, the conditions were already set to that kind. It's more not a green wave, more like a green awakening, so to speak. But this comes in the whole idea of mobilizing the Malay heartland. And it brings to show what is it they really want? What are the issues that are really important to them? And what is it that they hope to see in their leaders? And I think from there, if you look at Kelantan, Terengganu, and Kedah, it's definitely not what Pakatan Harapan is peddling.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. But I think the green wave here is non-existent because, as we know, it's 3-3, and most of the gain in the opposing state are very marginal. Yes, there's a good performance, but it's not a wave. Definitely not a wave, because otherwise they would have taken, let's say, Penang or Negeri Sembilan. That would be a wave. But also, it's a far cry from a referendum, because state election is not a referendum by any stretch, especially if you want your own state, Kedah, Kelantan, Terengganu. So to claim by certain Perikatan Nasional politicians that this is a referendum, no, it's not, because referendum is more than just that. It's a voice of the whole Malaysia towards a subject or issue. So yes, it's not a referendum.
I think that's also a very good, scaremongering tactic for those who are a bit more, have a bit of a phobia for these kinds of sentiments here. But playing semantics here, waves come in different degrees here, degrees of severity. So I would say it's a moderate wave that has happened here. But I think we can dive into something more sensitive here. Like, why is it that this idea of the green wave is so prevalent? Why is it that we are witnessing this now?
I think, someone said that it's been coined by Lim Kit Siang, the green wave, to I think to fight the narrative that DAP is China and wants to Christianize Malaysia. So the green wave is supposed to be fear mongering on the exact same issue. So the opposite of it is Christianizing all Malaysia. So, but like I said earlier on, this kind of strategy will not work if you want to fight fire with fire, because it just rests to the bottom. So why it started now, like you said, like it may come with different degree, but this is very mild wave, and you see, otherwise, but it should be a warn also to the Pakatan Harapan. But moving forward, like I said, focusing on other issues, especially economy, because there's a difference between mocking or saying something factually correct in terms of how you draw the line of profiling voters in Kelantan, Terengganu, right? Like, it is a fact that Penang, Selangor, and Negeri Sembilan, in terms of GDP PPP per capita, higher than these all three states. We can argue why the reasons are, because they don't have the so-called royalty given to Kelantan or Terengganu. But again, here is administration at place. Governance of the government of the day is very important. And that perpetuates other things. And then the rakyat is the true reflection of what they have chosen of their leadership, the state leadership. So what I'm trying to say here is, while it seems to be a bit impolite or rude to say that, hey, these voters from Kelantan are poor or they are marginalized, but it's also a fact. And this kind of group of people, when you play identity politics to them, it's easy for them to absorb this kind of narrative, because they are the group of people that having nothing to lose, because they already live in a different way of lifestyle from those in, let's say, in Bangsar, where they are so busy with their businesses, with their economy activities. I'm not saying that there's no economic activities in Kelantan for listeners or whatever. I'm not saying that, but look at the data and you can see profiling of these voters will match the way how identity politics always being played on, like how in other countries as well, like in the United States. It's always in California and New York. We all know it's a big city with big economy. Always go with the blue party. and the rednecks, or people from Texas, Arkansas, they are all rooting for the Great Party. So we know this is the equation. The question here is, how are we going to lessen the effect? We know we know it's the law of the nature. So how we can, like, that's why I said we need the Pakatan Harapan needs to move away from this, sort of ignore this kind of Malay for Malay, and then move into more politics. Because as long as we can get education and improve life, what do you call it, life standard in these three, Kedah, Kelantan, Terengganu, we can see a move towards more a bit to the center.
Yeah, but just putting this out there, but it's still a democratic process that we've seen here, and Kedah Terengganu Kelantan has already spoken, and I spoken resoundly on what is it they want out of their leadership and what issues they actually really strikes a chord with them, what resonates with them. And it seems that, from what I can tell, is, all this idea of development or progressive values or larger than life, very abstract um, policies or ideologies. It's not on their radar. It's not something that's in their consideration. What is really seems to be really just in their consideration is whether or not the sanctity of the Malays are protected, and the position of religion in their livelihood. This is what they want. And this seems to override some of what what you call more modern or economically prosperous states look towards. So it's a different, like you said, it's a different way of living. It's a different culture. It's a different mentality, and I think this also highlights that the idea of Malaysia, right? The whole Malaysian experiment hasn't properly integrated Kelantan, Terengganu, Kedah, all these heartland states into the national narrative. Because if we look at a person from Terengganu, Kelantan, or Kedah, they, by all means, they're quite independent. They don't really, they really know how to place their identity of being from these states above the idea of Malaysia. It's kind of like similar to Sabah Sarawak, where there's this stronger affiliation to the state identity rather than the national one. And maybe there's a historical precedence here because these states used to be, all the Patani territories. So, in a way, they are peripheral states. And I think this is the trend always with the periphery. It's the further away from the centers of power, is that you tend to be left out in the national narratives. Maybe by design, or maybe that's just how they want it to be. So it's another question of nation building as well, I feel, because it's so stark. The contrast is and the divide is very obvious. It's delineated very obvious. So it's shows that there's a identity here that exists very independently and very insulated from the national identity.
Especially when you talk about nation building here and the narrative of Malay for Malay. I think what if there's a political will from especially Anwar Ibrahim, because I know from the way he answered about the quota for university students for Bumiputra, he said, like, if we didn't maintain this, we will lose straight away the voters, right? So coming from that answer, we can tell Anwar Ibrahim would not they touch about reforming all this Malay privilege. But here's my opinion on how maybe Pakatan Harapan can move forward in terms of nation building, because I think to fight Malay for Malay narrative is Malaysian narrative. So you are not a Malay, you are not a Chinese, you are not Indian, you're not Kadazan, you are a Malaysian. And to pull this off, one of the few things maybe in terms of collectively and individually, Anwar Ibrahim need to commit on this action. Secondly, the component party, especially the AP, needs to look at themselves and look at themselves or in the mirror and ask themselves why, after so many election cycle, they still cannot get more of Malay voters. Yes, Chinese voters, I think to the max, so they cannot gain more from Chinese voters. I think the same can be said to Indian voters as well. Now, we've done everything and all, the AP done everything and all. How we can kind of, so to incorporate more races in their party will kill the narrative, or will kill the so-called claim that, hey, the AP is just the same thing, they're all Chinese, look at the whatever, all the same thing, even though we know in certain places, in very small group, there's a lot of Malay politicians or other ethnics in there. So in a larger scale here, what they can do in terms of nation building is to keep pushing the narrative that I'm not a Chinese, I'm a Malaysian. And if they can, I cannot give you into more details and how they can play this card. But if they can play it very well, it would kill the narrative of hey, it's Malay or Chinese, and it would work for every races, not just the Malay or the Chinese as two biggest, largest ethnic in Malaysia, but also to the rest, and even will be accepted more openly in Sarawak and Sabah, because that's what Sabah and Sarawak have a pride on. Like, hey, we are Sabahan, we are cool with everyone. So we want to, maybe Sabah and Sarawak counterparts can help Pakatan Harapan and DAP to create such a narrative that can the Malay buy into. Otherwise, I think the peak in 2018, where Malay voters vote for Pakatan Harapan, but 22 months wasted just like that, will the Malay again trust Pakatan Harapan? That's a bigger question.
Yeah, and I think that kind of sums it up as much as we can within the constraints of time for this segment on the recent state elections.
Yeah, well, Keluar Sekejap will go to the extent of 2 hours. We will not go for 2 hours. But
well, they have the all the time in the world. So
yeah, exactly.
it's funny. It's funny. Like, it's like, speaking of Keluar Sekejap, I remember this random story when I was in KL for the event that I was in. Apparently, Sharil Hamdan was sitting not too far away from where I was sitting.
Oh,
I did not notice he was there. He was just like really being part of the crowd until he posted on Instagram that he was here, and I said, I know that seat, I know that layout. Then I tried to,
no.
well, if Sharil Hamdan was ever listening, then wanted to say hello. I like your work. I like the podcast.
Shall we move on a little bit on today's news? Muhyiddin acquittal of by the High Court, Federal High Court. So for those listeners who do not know, the issue with this is that he was acquitted on a technical ground because the judge described the charges as defective. So that's the word defective. So the question here is, we need to ask the what do you call this, Attorney General, like, why you do such a messy work? The paperwork should be clean and proper. At the very least, this is a high profile case, and why you do such thing? That's why this kind of thing will breathe more rumors, because they were saying like, hey, Attorney General was actually appointed by Muhyiddin time. So maybe there's something here. So I know Pakatan Harapan, especially Anwar Ibrahim, doesn't want to interfere in court dealings, but I mean, look at your work, man, Attorney General. It shouldn't be this way. You should not be dismissed on technical ground. That's for other lawyers in Sabah to be to have that, not you.
I think also they really maintained that the Muhyiddin's legal team really maintained that whole story about how these funds, this whole Jana Wibawa situation here is that the funds has always been for the party and not for him in particular. But I think they are going for an appeal, aren't they? They're going to appeal this
Yes,
case.
Attorney General will go for appeal.
Yeah.
But having said that, Adi, this is not the only charges Muhyiddin facing. So there are
there's about 4 more, isn't there?
Yeah,
or
that's to the more.
money laundering. And I think this is going to interfere the other cases, the other charges that he's brought up on. I mean, precedence really matters here. Is that if he is acquitted of one thing, right, and some another charge of a similar nature is there, then they can just run by precedence and say, hey, it's already it's like a domino effect right there. So it's
Yeah.
going to affect the whole. And I definitely feel that everyone is going to be that's not a Muhyiddin supporter is going to be very upset about the situation. When for a lot of people, they feel that this is a very obvious situation here. This is a guilty verdict is quite logical, but this I think but this goes back into the whole. If you are a high level politician, a very well known politician, you have a case against you, you're brought to court. It's never going to be just a simple open and shut case where it's very straightforward. There's always going to be all manners of intrigue, favor buying, and other kinds of cable at work here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But again, I think the plus point here that it shows that Anwar Ibrahim doesn't interfere into these political proceedings, and how actually Perikatan Nasional play this narrative into their advantage is remain to be seen. And after the momentum that they're doing so well in state election, denying two-third majority in Selangor, and then now they have this win. I think there's I don't know if I'm really wrong here, because maybe PH will. This is part of their game where they want to create some false sense of security or false sense of achievement to Pakistan National and crush them down in general election. I hope that's the case, but I think I think
That,
it's
that's a bit too far like very
far-fetched.
4D
Yeah,
chess mental gymnastics kind of strategy. But I mean,
yeah,
there's brilliant politicians all around. It's something I feel Mahathir would do.
yeah. But unfortunately, Mahathir
Anwar,
is on the other side. Yeah.
yeah. Speaking of which, we did forget a lot of those. I would say outlying players, haven't we? Like Mahathir, um,
Mm.
who's his involvement with PAS, and I think no, going back. Actually, I want to go back here. Is that um, what do you think? How this will affect the current government, the status quo that's already been set here with the acquittal for Muhyiddin, this one acquittal. I mean, it still can be seen like a rallying cry, and he could play the same situation as Sanusi did, which is the role of martyr.
Yeah, I think as I like I said, it's a status quo. Nothing much has changed. It's just how the narrative that Pikatan try to amplify this little victory that they have. So what remains to be seen here is how Pakatan Harapan fight on to cancel out this narrative, and at the same time doing an actual work to govern this country better. Because if they can do these two things simultaneously, I don't doubt that they can garner the trust of not just the Malay voters but the whole Malaysia. So this is a two-prong strategy that needs to be done. None of them are easy, but hey, you really wanted that seat. You really wanted to be the government of the day. That's what you got to do. So Muhyiddin acquittal is like we said, there are more cases coming. Same thing for other politicians. Syed Saddiq. I think Guan Eng also still in the court proceedings. Zahid Hamidi still facing charges. So there are more up and downs in terms of politicians in the court. So I don't think that would affect that much, because since Najib Razak cases, we some sort of already desensitized. We desensitized with all these politicians being charged, and then hey, they got away with it. Started with Musa Aman, less than 1 year, everything quitted. I think almost 100 charges. Just like that, he left the court with nothing, not a scratch on his file. So it's not going to be a very big effect to how
I
government
think
of the
I think once Najib's case was more or less settled, it's that interest in any of this has sort of diminished in a way. Like we would be more interested in following Najib Razak's cases rather than Muhyiddin or Zaid Hamidi.
Yeah, because at the time he was the first one, right?
Yeah, he
That
was the
brought
first, and considered the biggest.
yeah, this is the biggest shark in the ocean, and then he was dragged to the court, and the finale couldn't be better. The execution of he went to Kajang prison. But
Mhm,
again, now we see Syed Saddiq going to the court on both sides. We see
mhm.
so
But
nothing,
but
not
I
so much
think
of
for
problem.
Syed Saddiq, it's even more sensitive considering how Muda, I feel, is still relying a lot on his on his image as well, being the poster boy of the party, the founder, and after the performance in the recent state elections, I feel his leadership is even more important now, and to be able to slap those charges. And now he doesn't have that safety net of being in the government. He is choosing to be opposition. Who's it's opening yourself up to for all everything to open up against you.
But I think kudos to all the Muda members, especially those who fielded in the recently election.
Especially for
I
the first
mean,
time.
yeah, I mean, Muda is less than 3 years old. Pati, even Syed Saddiq is a less than 10-year politician, even though he's a MP. But again, hey, Muda has a long, long way to go, and this is just the start of a new, what they so-called new reform, new kind of politics that they want to bring to the center. And I'm all excited for them, despite all the funny lost deposit candidates. I mean, it's
It takes time. It definitely takes
it
time.
takes time. Yeah, at least 10 years from now, they can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, 10 years ago, we lost all our deposit, but look at us now."
I,
I
I think
I
it
really want.
I think it took DAP about 30 years to really find their footing and find their strengths. So for this one, I think Muda just needs to go in for the long haul, getting ready for the long ride.
Yeah, I think they know the game. They just have to play with the rules. So yeah, all the best for them.
Okay, so well, I think this is the first time we went really over 1 hour.
Yeah. Well, last episode we around the same
Same here.
time.
Okay.
But shall
Okay.
we? Shall we? Because in Kopitiam Council, we always talk about whole issue. So
Mhm.
I think due to the election recently, we may focus too much on what happening in domestically. But let's just move the border just to our north of Malaysia to Thailand. So
Mhm.
today, the High Court ruled that to dismiss the petition that being filed by Move Forward Party to look at the why the re what they call the renomination the re I don't know. I can't find the words. I'm so sorry, brain freeze right now. But to block move forward party to nominate uh, uh, what is his name
Pita.
again?
Pita.
Pita. Yeah, I don't know what's happening to me, but yeah. You want to continue this, Adi?
Yeah, I think so far, Move Forward Party's Prime Minister candidate Pita is, he's still considered the candidate of choice here for, especially from the Move Forward Party, and the runner-ups with Piutai, may be able to clinch this on a technicality has kind of ruffled a lot for the Move Forward Party itself. So but that's one thing. In the coming week, in the following, in the no, actually next week, I think all the Thai lawmakers will be coming down to vote on who really should be the next prime
On
minister
twenty
candidate.
second.
Yeah, on the
Yeah,
22nd.
on 22nd. But also another issue also waiting for Pita is that the charges of where he wants to amend the last majest law. Now the court trying to look into it because the one lawyer argues that this is sort of a criminal act on Pita behalf. So by trying to amend through the parliament is actually the only way you can amend a law. But again, this sort of kangaroo court lawyer trying to argue that, hey, it's wrong. So if you can't amend your law from parliament, where else can you do it? So
that also kind of like puts a stop on any discussion on these less just laws. Is that talking
because
about
it's the populist thing to do.
Of course, it's like akin to being a traitor to the state in a way. Just even talking about it.
Can you imagine if Anwar Ibrahim or Syed Saddiq talking about the same thing in Malaysia? Like, I mean, it's no brainer for most people. Just like, hey, saying no to Syed Saddiq. So yeah, what Pita is, it's an upheaval battle in Bangkok. All the best to Move Forward Party, and they also says they will not vote for few party candidate. So we already know that there's a vote on 22nd. So we will not see Move Forward Party vote pure party candidate. So it could be other party, Democratic Party or other party.
I feel most likely if it's not Move Forward, I think Putai would be the obvious choice. I believe, and I think that's going to just be a continuation of Thaksin's will, so to speak.
I'm a bit skeptical on that, but let's find out on 22nd.
We will find out 22nd.
Yeah, that's a little bit that we can bring to you from Thailand. To all our listeners, if you're listening this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, thank you very much. That's 1 hour and 11 minutes. Adi, anything from you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to cover here. PRN, of course, some might say status quo, some might say it's shaking up a lot of the foundations that's already been set. But we remember that this is a democracy, and people's the will of the people should be respected. Although we might have to also bring this up here, not to put any bitter poison, but we also have to consider the voter turnout here. Is this really the will of the people expressing itself in the polls? But hey, an argument can also be made that not voting is also an expression of your democratic rights. Choosing not to vote is almost like protesting the available choices. So maybe somebody can fill in that that void there. Whoever doesn't want to vote, maybe the people that doesn't really not keen on voting.
Yeah, I mean, it's always known that a state election will be much lower turnout than general election. That's why I think the next one should be sync all together again, so that we can see a good turnout. Maybe not 80%. That would be a very ambitious target. But 75, that would be a nice number where we can see at least only
better representation.
Better representation with more people coming out to vote and select and exercise their democratic rights, right?
Yeah, definitely. So let's just hope the next elections, barring the next general election, would be I think Sabah will also be one of them coming soon, right? In the next 2 years.
Yep.
So another round of midterms before the next general election, and
yeah,
definitely in those years to come, I think hopefully we'll still be talking about these things.
Yeah, but that's another headache for another day, and
many years to come.
many years to come. And let's conclude this episode for today. It's mainly about state elections and a little bit of Thai. I wanted to touch on Ecuador, but maybe next episode. Eddie, shall we?
Yep, definitely. Thank you to everyone listening.
All right. Goodbye for now.